Chief Warrant Officer Elise Ryker, hidden at Cerberus Base, is a remnant. She takes care of the old AC-47, the Matriarch. Young soldiers laugh at her, disdainful. The faint crow-wing tattoo on her arm hides a secret. A fierce sandstorm comes, stopping all air operations. Communication with the attack convoy is cut off.
Fly.
Panic spreads in the command tent. Elise Ryker appears, calmly declaring, "The Matriarch can flee." The AC-47 Matriarch roars to take off in the fierce sandstorm. Elise Ryker is in the cockpit, eyes determined, hands gripping the controls. She has become Nyx, the legend that flies into the air. In the air, Nyx controls the Matriarch to destroy the enemy. She doesn't just fly, she punishes. Every strike is precise. On the ground, Hartley and Shaw are stunned. The legend they once despised has been reborn, dominating the skies. The storm cleared and the Matriarch landed. Elise stepped out, her face greasy but calm. The entire base stood in silence, respectful. She stroked the plane's wing, then quietly walked toward the hangar. Nyx was back where she belonged. To many, she was an echo, a holdover, a curious footnote among digital warfare, drones, and whispering helicopters. Her domain? An old AC-47 gunship at the far edge of the airstrip, a behemoth dubbed the Matriarch. Most called it that with a smirk, thinking both the plane and its keeper belonged to the same dusty museum. Newly appointed Colonel Hartley was one of them. Young for command and eager to optimize, he believed the base ran on code, not instinct. The Matriarch? To him, a static liability. "Focus on the Blackhawks, Chief," he said after touring the hangar. "That old thing won't fly in today's war." She didn't argue. Elise rarely did. Among the junior officers, Lieutenant Cameron Shaw was the loudest scoffer. Dashing in his aviators, flying sleek Apaches, he often shouted at her across the tarmac, "Still trying to wake the dead, Chief? Don't you know the museum's closed?" She never replied, never flinched. Her hands, stained with oil and history, moved across the Matriarch like a lover's hands. She knew every vibration, every groan in the metal. Beneath the sleeve of her fatigues, barely visible on her left wrist, a faded raven's wing tattoo hinted at a life no one dared ask about. She was forgotten until the storm came. It began like any other deployment day. Hot, still, unremarkable. A convoy was scheduled to move through a stretch of terrain the maps labeled Serpent's Gulch, a narrow canyon notorious for ambushes. The decision came from higher up. Move fast, trust the Apaches for cover, and don't expect resistance. The brass had grown confident, maybe too confident, after a string of clean runs. Lieutenant Shaw and his wingman, flying two sleek AH-64E Apaches, were to be the angels overhead. The convoy, 30 trucks loaded with medical supplies and ammunition, was the lifeline to a remote outpost near the border. It should have been routine, but the desert had other plans. At 1400 hours, a shamal, a violent sandstorm, swept over the base like an avalanche. Within minutes, the sky turned ochre. Visibility dropped to zero. The air burned and rasped as millions of sand grains scoured metal, skin, and morale. Colonel Hartley ordered immediate shutdown of all aerial operations. The Apaches were sensitive, precision-built machines. Their turbines too delicate, their sensors too vulnerable. They were grounded, shrouded in tarps, expensive, useless statues. Then the radio crackled. "Contact, contact, ambush, we're pinned, taking fire from high ground. Request immediate air support. Repeat, immediate." Static swallowed the rest. Inside the command tent, panic swelled. The digital map showed the convoy icons blinking red. The canyon was a kill box, and the enemy had prepared it perfectly. A full battalion dug in, coordinated and waiting. Colonel Hartley barked at his staff, "Get me air cover, now!" But no pilot could fly through the storm. No drone could see, no satellite link held. The storm was blinding, relentless. They listened, helpless, as desperate voices crackled through the comms, pleading, then screaming. And that's when Elise Ryker walked in. Dust clung to her shoulders. Her boots tracked silence. She didn't raise her voice, didn't ask permission. She simply stated, "The matriarch can fly." Hartley didn't even look at her. "This isn't the time for nostalgia, Chief. That thing couldn't find this tent in daylight, let alone a canyon in a sandstorm. She doesn't need GPS. She's analog. Compass, gyro, shielded engines. She won't choke on dust. And I know the valley." Lieutenant Shaw chuckled. "You're insane. That relic is barely airworthy. I pre-flight her daily." She turned to Hartley. "We fly now or we count the dead later." The room fell into stunned silence, and Colonel Hartley, out of options and out of time, nodded. "Get in the air." The hangar doors screamed open against the wind. Outside, the world was orange chaos, sand slicing through the air like razors, the storm howling like a living thing. And there, hunched against the horizon like a war relic from a forgotten time, stood the matriarch. Elise Ryker didn't hesitate. Her stride was steady, unfazed. Every step was muscle memory. Every motion, from fueling to flap check to ammo feed, executed with the precision of someone who had done it 10,000 times before. Inside the cockpit, she strapped in. Leather creaked. The instruments hummed softly under her fingers. No glowing screens, no voice command systems, just steam gauges, analog dials, toggle switches, and trust. She whispered, "Let's go, girl." Then the engines roared to life. It wasn't the high whine of turbines, it was a growl, a thunderous, throaty rumble that shook the walls of the hangar and startled the ground crew. The matriarch wasn't awakening. She was rising. The gunship trundled forward, its bulk defying the storm with each rotation of its heavy wheels. Sand blasted the windshield, but Elise didn't flinch. Her hands gripped the yoke, her feet danced on the pedals. As she pushed the throttle, the aircraft fought gravity like a beast resisting chains. And then, against every forecast and regulation, it lifted. In the command tent, a grainy black and white feed flickered to life. A low-band analog camera, one of the only systems still functional, caught glimpses of a spinning dust vortex. Nothing more. Until her voice came through. "Entering Serpent's Gulch, holding at 1,000 feet. Wind vector 22 south-southeast. Targets visible." A stunned hush fell over the room. "Observation only," Hartley reminded her over comms. "Just give us enemy positions, Chief. No engagement." But in the air, Elise's hand moved, calm, confident, to a rusted panel on her left. She flipped one switch, then another, then a third. Dim red lights blinked awake across the console. Lights that hadn't glowed in decades. And then she spoke again. But it wasn't Chief Ryker speaking. "This is Nix," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "I am engaging." The silence in the command tent cracked like glass. The name rippled across the room. Nix, a name from military folklore. A ghost. A myth whispered by special ops. The ace of a black ops squadron that didn't exist on paper. The woman who flew missions no one returned from. The pilot who disappeared a decade ago without a trace. No one had known she was still alive. No one had known she was here. Then came the sound. It wasn't the modern Gatling gun's electric purr. It was a roar, a howl of destruction. 3 ancient miniguns torn to life, spitting red tracers like dragons exhaling fire. The matriarch didn't just fire, she punished. The gunship emerged from a curtain of sand, strafed the ridge with mathematical precision, then vanished again. Mortar teams disappeared. Machine gun nests disintegrated. RPG teams were cut down mid-strike. Each pass was fast, devastating, and perfectly executed. And all the while Elise's voice, Nix's voice, came through the comms, cold and surgical. Mortar team at Delta Ridge neutralized. Moving to east flank, machine gunner suppressed. Heavy armor cluster, eliminated. She flew the beast like it was an extension of herself. The plane screamed and groaned, but she pulled it through corkscrews and banking turns. No one thought possible for such a lumbering bird. Down in the gulch, soldiers who had given up hope looked skyward and saw salvation. They didn't see a relic. They saw a phantom, a black-winged angel slicing through the sand, dealing righteous fire to their enemies. The tide turned, the ambushers fell apart. The convoy rallied. Back in command, Colonel Hartley stood frozen, headset slipping from his head. Lieutenant Shaw had no words. His hands trembled. The swagger was gone. Only awe remained. And above it all, the Matriarch flew. Steady, brutal, graceful. A forgotten weapon reborn under the hands of the ghost they once laughed at. By the time the sandstorm began to break and the skies cleared, it was over. The battle wasn't just won, it was dominated. By a woman no one saw coming. By Nyx. Oshbram. The wind began to die. The ochre sky lightened to a pale, dust-filtered gray. The storm retreated like a wounded animal, and sunlight pushed weakly through its tattered veil. Below, Serpent's Gulch lay still. Fires crackled from destroyed mortar pits. The canyon walls, once alive with gunfire, now echoed with the shouts of medics and the groans of the wounded. But also with something else. Relief. Upao. The vast circle Elise Ryker made over the canyon was not tactical. It was ritual. A guardian sweep. Her tribute to the soldiers she'd protected. Back at the airfield, the Matriarch descended like a war-beaten bird coming home. The landing gear kissed the tarmac, firm and true. Her engine sputtered, then cut out with one final deep-throated sigh. A hush fell across the base. It wasn't the hush of confusion or routine. It was reverence. As the canopy creaked open, the entire command team rushed forward, not with orders or criticism, but with eyes wide and mouths closed. Elise emerged like a spirit crossing dimensions. Grease smudged across her cheek, fatigue lines carved deeper by light, but unharmed. She didn't look to the crowd, didn't raise her hands in victory. She did what she had always done. She reached down and ran her palm across the Matriarch's wing. A mechanic's gesture, a final check, gratitude, love. Colonel Hartley stood a few steps away, flanked by Lieutenant Shaw and nearly every soldier on the base. His earlier certainty had melted into visible shame. His eyes searched hers, then fell to the dusty tarmac. When he finally spoke, the words were soft and cracking. Chief Warrant Officer Ryker, I thank you. He couldn't say more. He didn't need to. Shaw stepped forward. Gone was the swagger, the aviators, the smirk. In their place stood a man humbled to the marrow. He saluted, not quickly, not out of habit, but slow, deliberate, and sincere. One by one, every soldier raised their hand, saluting not rank, not position, but respect earned. Elise Ryker nodded once. Quiet acknowledgement. No smile, no speech. Then she turned and walked back toward the hangar. The legend of Nyx didn't need applause, just the hum of an engine and the silence she left behind. Shoam. She walked alone. The crowd parted, unsure whether to speak or stand. Her boots left quiet prints in the tarmac dust, trailing toward the hangar like footsteps into myth. The sunlight caught her wrist briefly, revealing the faded ink of a raven's wing, almost forgotten by time. She didn't look back. Inside the hangar, Elise Ryker went straight to work. Bullet holes to patch, hydraulics to check, fuel lines to recalibrate. The Matriarch, her war-worn partner, had done the impossible. Again. And Elise knew better than anyone. If you fly through hell, you don't rest. You repair. Back on the airstrip, Colonel Hartley remained frozen, watching her disappear into the shadows. His entire worldview had shifted in hours, broken by the quiet determination of one woman who didn't shout, didn't argue, and didn't ask permission. He had dismissed her as obsolete, and she had answered by saving his entire command. Not with modern tools, not with digital maps, but with instinct, with grit, with memory forged in fire. She didn't need medals. She had the roar of engines, the thrum of propellers, and the knowledge that, once again, she'd kept good people alive.